Africa is not poor. Africa is taken. I repeat it slowly because it was designed to feel uncomfortable, not for them, for us, because discomfort is what breaks habits. And the most dangerous theft committed against Africa was not gold, oil, or land. It was the theft of understanding. When a people lose understanding, everything else becomes negotiable. From the moment many of us learned to read, we were trained to accept a single story about our own continent. Africa failed. Africa is backward. Africa is always behind. Year after year, repetition turned insult into fact. That is how domination survives. Not through chains alone, but through repetition. When a lie is repeated long enough, it becomes the air people breathe. You start defending it. Here is the first wound. Sit with it. If you were born in Africa, do you honestly believe you were taught the true history of your own continent? Or were you taught a version that made someone else feel innocent, justified, and superior? Answer that for yourself before you answer anyone else. Because no people can rise while living inside a story written to keep them small. Africa is described as poor, yet it holds close to a third of the world's strategic resources. Africa is described as weak, yet global powers compete relentlessly to control influence here. Africa is described as irrelevant, yet sanctions, coups, proxy wars, and propaganda follow every attempt at self-determination. That contradiction should disturb you. Poverty does not attract obsession, power does. Obsession follows value. This is where the lie begins to crack. Imperial domination did not disappear, it evolved. It learned to speak softly. It learned to wear suits instead of uniforms. It learned to say aid, development, and stability while preserving the same grip. The language changed. The intention did not. What once arrived by force now arrives by contract. What once demanded obedience now rewards compliance. The chains became invisible, but the pressure never left. And here is where morality enters the conversation, whether anyone likes it or not. Evil does not always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it announces itself with paperwork, with agreements that look fair, with systems that look neutral, with rules written so one side always wins, and the other is told to be grateful for participation. Before we go further, act. If you have ever felt anger or shame when Africa was reduced to a charity case, press like now, do it deliberately. That single action tells the algorithm and the system behind it that this conversation will not be buried. And if you want content that does not kneel, does not dilute, and does not apologize for telling the truth, subscribe and turn on notifications. Channels like this survive only when viewers stop being passive. Now answer this honestly in the comments. If you were born in Africa, do you believe you were taught the true history of your own continent, or a version designed to make others comfortable? Write it. Even one word is enough. Silence protects lies. Speech weakens them. Now we go deeper. Because if the lie trained our minds, the structure trained our lives. If the lie shaped our thinking, the structure shaped our reality. When independence arrived in the 1960s, Africa celebrated, flags rose, anthems were sung, tears flowed, hope was loud, but real power never followed the ceremony. Currencies remained controlled. Trade rules stayed unequal. Extraction never paused. Political independence was allowed, but only on the condition that economic obedience remained intact. That was not failure. That was design. Independence was permitted as a performance, not as a transfer of control. You could change the flag, but not the system. You could elect leaders, but not rewrite the rules. You could speak of sovereignty, but only within boundaries already drawn for you. The message was clear: manage the people, not the economy. And when direct colonial control became too visible to defend, a more efficient weapon replaced it. Local intermediaries. Leaders who looked like us, spoke our languages, and wore our clothes, but governed upward, not outward. They learned quickly how the system works. Serve the master and live well. Question the master and be isolated. Pray, and you will be praised internationally. Resist, and you will be destroyed locally. So wealth flowed outward quietly. Public money disappeared into foreign accounts. Children of elites were sent abroad while local schools collapsed. Hospitals decayed, while private clinics flourished for the connected, and the people were told to be patient, to wait, to trust the process, to accept excuses as policy. Let me break the silence here and ask you directly, According to you, who has harmed FRICA more, external powers or internal leaders who betrayed their own people? Write your answer in the comments, do not soften it. This system survives on politeness and silence. Refuse both. And answer this honestly as well. Were you ever taught that Africa always needs to be saved? If yes, saved from whom? And saved for whose benefit? Because salvation that never produces freedom is not salvation. It is management. This is not a conspiracy. It is arithmetic. Tens of billions leave Africa every single year through pricing tricks, tax evasion, and financial leaks. Aid arrives loudly with speeches and cameras. Extraction leaves quietly without headlines. Then the same voices call Africa dependent and demand gratitude. If this realization makes you angry, good. Anger is not the danger here. Forgetting is. Anger can be directed. Forgetting only repeats. Before we move on, act again. If this chapter gave you language for something you have felt for years, press like. And if you want analysis that exposes structure, instead of blaming victims, subscribe and turn on notifications. Visibility is how truth survives online. Now we move from theory to proof. One country, one example. No excuse. If you still think this is theory, this chapter will force you to face reality. For more than 4 decades, uranium taken from Niger powered foreign cities. Streetlights never dimmed. Factories never slept. Entire modern economies ran on energy pulled from Niger-ian soil, and yet, on that same soil, darkness ruled. Villages without electricity, clinics without power. Children studying by candlelight. This is not neglect. This is design. Design means intention. It means someone decided that light would travel outward while darkness remained local, that profit would move abroad while poverty stayed behind. That value would be extracted, but development would be postponed forever. And Niger is not an exception. It is a blueprint. Across the Sahel, the same pattern repeats with brutal consistency. Gold without roads, oil without hospitals, minerals guarded by soldiers, while nearby communities are abandoned. Extraction zones treated like foreign territory. Wealth leaves faster than dust can settle. And then, with a straight face, the same voices return and label Africa poor. Pricing for sense of flee. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever felt shame or anger when outsiders called Africa the poor continent? Say it in the comments. That feeling is not weakness, it is recognition. Recognition that something is deeply wrong, and that the story you were taught does not match the reality you can see. Here is the truth they avoid saying clearly. People do not rise up because they are impatient. They rise up because they are cornered. For decades, Africans were told to wait. Wait for development. Wait for reform. Wait for aid. Wait for democracy to mature. But the only thing that consistently arrived was loss. Loss of land, loss of dignity, loss of time. And then something changed. When Niger, Mali, and Burkina finally said no, the world panicked. Not debated, not negotiated. Panicked because panic does not come from poverty. Panic comes when control slips. Sanctions followed, threats followed, moral lectures followed. Suddenly, the same powers that ignored darkness cared deeply about stability. Suddenly, sovereignty became dangerous. Suddenly, African decisions were called irresponsible. Pause here and act. If this chapter says what you have felt but were never allowed to say, press like right now. Do it while the feeling is hot. That action tells the system this conversation cannot be quietly buried. And if you want content that names patterns instead of hiding them, subscribe and turn on notifications. Channels like this exist only when viewers refuse to stay invisible. Now answer this directly in the comments. What hurts you most when you think about Africa being exploited, being disrespected, or being divided? One word is enough. Pain reveals priority. Because the moment Niger said no, the system showed its true face. And that brings us to what happened next. Once the system was challenged, it responded exactly as it always does. Pressure came first. Sanctions wrapped in moral language, isolation disguised as responsibility. Media flooded the same words again and again. Instability, extremism, danger. Context vanished. History was erased. Fear was amplified. At the same time, violence escalated on the ground. Armed groups grew bolder. Pressure intensified. The message was clear. Obedience brings stability. Self-determination brings chaos. Burkshell's. This is an old script, but this time it failed. Because people named the pattern. Once pressure is named, it loses power. Once fear is understood, it stops controlling behavior. Africans recognized that instability was not random, chaos was not accidental, it was a tool. A lever pulled whenever control slipped. A warning shot meant to discipline anyone who dared step out of line. And here, I will not remove God from the conversation to make anyone comfortable. Many Africans believe God did not create nations to live on their knees forever. In our veins flows the blood of people who survived slavery, colonialism, and betrayal, and still stood. Faith was not given to numb us. It was given to anchor us. If you believe God did not bring a free K this far to remain silent, write Amen in the comments, not for religion alone, but for conviction. Let it be seen. Let it be counted. Now I ask you a question that defines the future. Should Africa accept stability at any cost, or choose self-determination, even if it demands sacrifice? There is no neutral answer. Choose one. Explain why. Silence, here is also a choice. And if you are African by blood but living in the West, answer this honestly. Where do you feel you belong? The country you live in, or the continent your blood comes from? Write it. Many are watching and feeling the same conflict but think they are alone. Tell us which country you are watching from, so we can see how far this community reaches. And if this video speaks what you already believe, but rarely hear spoken aloud, write, I stand with Africa. Let others know they are not alone. Because once fear stopped working, the system had to change tactics. And that shift reveals what it fears most. Every system that survives theft depends on one condition. The victims must never unite. That is why Africa was sliced into artificial borders. That is why tribes were weaponized against each other. That is why religion was politicized. That is why language became a wall instead of a bridge. Division was not a side effect. It was the strategy. Because a united Africa is not manageable. Let us be honest. External powers did not succeed alone. They studied our fractures and pressed where it hurt most, and internal traitors helped them. Leaders who chose comfort over conscience. Elites who traded national dignity for foreign approval. Men who learned how to speak about African pride in public while selling it in private. Here is a question I want you to answer clearly in the comments. According to you, who has harmed Africans more, outside powers or internal leaders who betrayed their own people? Do not soften it. Say what you believe. And here is the part many avoid. Division survives because it is rewarded. Divide the people and you become indispensable to the system. Unite the people and you become dangerous. That is why unity terrifies them more than weapons. When Sahel nations chose mutual defense, it was not symbolism, it was memory. For decades, African countries were isolated and punished one by one. Today, that formula is breaking. But hear me carefully, unity without economic sovereignty is illusion. Unity without control over energy, food, finance, and infrastructure is decoration. Flags do not feed people. Control does. So now I ask you something uncomfortable. Should Africa continue playing by their rules, or should Africa write new rules, even if the price is high? There is no safe middle ground. Choose your answer and explain it in the comments. If this question makes you uneasy, that means it matters. Before we move forward, act. You believe African unity scares the system more than African weakness ever could? Press like now. And if you want to be part of a community that speaks without fear, subscribe and turn on notifications. Silence is how they win. Visibility is how we fight back. Africa is the youngest continent on Earth, hundreds of millions under the age of 25. This is not a burden. It is a threat to systems built on cheap labor, fragmented societies, and obedient governments. Youth unemployment is not an accident. It is the result of economies designed to extract raw materials, not create opportunity. Change the design, and the outcome changes. Keep the design, and anger grows. Ask yourself this. Why is Africa always described as the future, but never allowed to control it? Because a confident, educated, economically independent African youth is ungovernable by old rules. This is why narratives intensify. This is why pressure accelerates. This is why time suddenly matters to them. If you are young and African, or African by blood, understand this. You were not born to inherit excuses. You were born to inherit responsibility. Responsibility to question. responsibility to rebuild, responsibility to refuse humiliation. And if you are part of the African diaspora, let me speak to you directly. Many of you live between worlds, accepted conditionally in the West, question constantly about where you belong. So answer honestly in the comments. Where do you feel you belong? Where your passport is issued, or where your blood comes from? This struggle is not about hatred, it is about refusal. Refusal to pass silence to the next generation. Refusal to teach children that dependency is destiny. And yes, faith matters here. Many Africans believe God did not preserve us through slavery and colonialism, so we could remain quiet beneficiaries of someone else's system. God does not free people so they can kneel forever. If you believe Africa has a future worth fighting for, write, I stand with Africa in the comments. Let the algorithm see conviction. Let others see courage. Tell us which country you are watching from. Say it clearly. This community is larger than borders. And tell me which country you want the next video to focus on, because this conversation does not end here. There is one thing the system fears more than protests, more than speeches, more than elections. It fears memory. Because the moment a people remembers who they were before humiliation, control becomes fragile. Africa is dangerous not when it is angry, but when it is conscious. Conscious of its history, conscious of its value, conscious of the tricks used to keep it quiet. That is why history was rewritten. That is why textbooks were softened. That is why African resistance was reduced to footnotes, while African suffering was turned into identity. We were taught what was done to us, but rarely what we did back. We were taught pain, not power. Victimhood, not agency. Ask yourself this and answer honestly in the comments. If you were born in Africa, do you believe you were taught the true history of your own continent, or a version that made others comfortable? Because no nation rises while living inside a borrowed narrative. The system wants Africans to remember slavery, but forget resistance, to remember colonialism, but forget victory, to remember weakness, but forget genius. Because memory creates confidence, and confidence creates disobedience. And disobedience is the one thing extraction systems cannot tolerate. This is why unity across borders is dangerous. This is why Pan-African ideas are mocked, minimized, or framed as unrealistic, not because they are impossible, but because they are uncontrollable. They awaken memory across lines, designed to keep people separate. And here is where faith and memory collide. Many Africans believe God is not neutral about justice, that he hears nations, not only individuals, that he does not preserve a people through centuries of slavery, conquest, and betrayal, just to leave them silent at the end. Throughout history, every liberation began with remembrance, a moment when people realized they were not born to kneel. If you believe a Africa was not created to live permanently on its knees, write amen in the comments. Let it be seen. Let it be counted. Now, act again. This chapter forced you to question what you were taught in school or shown in Western media about Africa. Press like. And if you want content that restores memory, instead of erasing it, subscribe and turn on notifications. This channel exists to challenge forgetting. Before we move to the final chapter, answer this as well. What was the first moment you began to doubt what Western books or media taught you about Africa? One sentence is enough. Your story may awaken someone else. Because once memory returns, one unavoidable question follows. What do we do now? Memory leads to one unavoidable truth. There is no neutral position anymore. Africa stands at a fork in the road. One path promises stability at any cost, quiet obedience, predictable suffering, managed decline dressed as peace. The other path demands self-determination. It demands sacrifice. It demands discipline. And it demands courage. So I ask you plainly, should Africa accept stability at any price, or choose self-rule even if the cost is high? There is no safe answer, only an honest one. Write it in the comments. This is not a romantic struggle. It is not a movie. It is a generational decision. Either Africa continues to play by rules written to extract from it, or Africans begin writing new rules, fully aware that resistance will come. And yes, resistance will come. It always does when power shifts. But understand this, nothing changes without pressure, nothing moves without consequence, and nothing meaningful is built by people who refuse to choose. Silence is a choice. Delay is a choice. Neutrality is a luxury Africa can no longer afford. If you are African by birth or by blood, this moment belongs to you, whether you asked for it or not. If you are in the African diaspora, this moment still belongs to you. Distance does not erase responsibility. Comfort does not cancel calling. God does not free people so they can outsource their destiny. God does not awaken a generation just to watch it look away. So let me make this final call unmistakably clear. If this video says what you already feel but were afraid to say out loud, write "I stand with Africa" in the comments. Let others find you. Let the algorithm register conviction. Tell us which country you are watching from. Say it clearly. This community is larger than borders, larger than language, larger than fear. And tell me which country you want the next video to focus on: Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Mali, Burkina, Niger, South Africa, or another. This is not a monologue. It is a conversation. Africa is not poor. Africa is taken. And once a people stops accepting theft as normal, silence ends. When silence ends, systems shake.